Howdy, everybody. Dr. Andy Woods here, pastor teacher here at Sugarland Bible Church. This is being released January the 2nd, 2026. This is Pastor's Point of View number 389. And look at this, folks. We're in a brand new year. And so what better way to start off a new year than to bring you a prophecy update, because we believe whatever happened in 2025 related to prophetic stage setting, 2026 is certainly, if the Lord tarries, going to up the game significantly. And we're here to bring you these weekly updates just to keep you up to speed. You'll notice our preview slide. We're going to look at two issues in this particular installment, this particular episode. Number one, we're going to talk about the Restrainer. And then number two, we're going to talk about the world against Israel. We'll spend most of our time there on number two. Let's jump right in and talk about the Restrainer. You might recall what the Apostle Paul says concerning the Restrainer in 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 6 and 7. He says, "And you know what restrains him," that would be the Antichrist in context, "now, so that in his time he will be revealed, for the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way." So it's a very interesting prophecy that as bad as things are in the world, there's some kind of restraint that is holding things back, holding back Satan's man of the hour, the Antichrist. Even though clearly the mystery of lawlessness is already at work, we can see the global stage being set up for the fulfillment of God's end-time program. One of the things that God can use to restrain evil is the institution of human government. After all, that's why he created it, going back to the Noahic covenant in Genesis 9 and verse 6. But notice what Paul says here in Romans 13, verses 3 through 5, he says, "For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Then do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For it," or government, "is a minister of God for you, but if you do what is evil, be afraid. For it," government, "does not bear the sword for nothing. For it," government, "is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil." Close quote. The Trump administration, to a very large extent, and I realize that in some ways Trump has expedited the end-time program. We'll make reference to that a little bit later. But in other ways, the Trump administration, to a very large extent, has been sort of a restraint on evil. And one of the things I want to call your attention to is something that just happened on Christmas of all times. And this is an article that comes from the Jerusalem Post. One day after Christmas, it was written, December 26th, 2025, and it says, "Trump orders strike on ISIS in Nigeria and wishes Merry Christmas to the dead terrorists." What's going on here in this article? Let's read a little bit from it if we could. U.S. Africa Command, known as AFRICOM, launched a strike against Islamic State terrorists in Nigeria. U.S. President Donald Trump announced on social media, on social media early on Friday. AFRICOM stated that the strike in Sokoto was carried out in coordination with Nigerian authorities and killed multiple terrorists. The strike was ordered due to the persistent threat of terrorism and violent extremism, the Nigerian Foreign Ministry confirmed in a statement. The Department of War executed numerous perfect strikes, as only the United States is capable of doing, Trump said, adding that he wishes a Merry Christmas to all, including the dead terrorists, of which there were many. And the reason that they were killed by cooperation from the U.S. government is they were slaughtering Christians. The article goes on and it says Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, in a Christmas statement released on Wednesday, affirmed that he is committed to doing everything within his power to enshrine religious freedom in Nigeria and protect Christians and Muslims and all Nigerians from violence. No one, regardless of ethnicity or belief, should be made to suffer for professing or practicing his faith, he added. Islamic State attacks on Christian Nigerians include mass kidnappings and attacks on churches, and these have risen significantly in recent months. So here we have yet another example in Nigeria where what I call facetiously the religion of peace, Islam, is just butchering Christians, destroying churches, involved in all kinds of barbaric behavior. And the Nigerian authorities, along with the Trump administration, said enough is enough and did what had to be done in terms of taking out these terrorists. And when our president does things like this, it has a tremendous impact on other would-be terrorists. They're going to think twice before they engage in such barbaric behavior, martyring Christians left and right, unfortunately, as has been common in Nigeria. And very Trump-like, he gave a warning. He explained if things don't change, then there's going to be consequences and repercussions. And even more importantly than issuing a threat, he actually followed through. So this comes from the Teddy Roosevelt mindset, speak softly and carry a big stick. This is how government is supposed to operate, and it has the net effect of deterring not just terrorism, but persecution of Christians around the world. And to this, I just say thank you, Mr. President. And to be frank with you and honest with you, I don't know of any U.S. president that would do something like this. The closest I can think of is Reagan. There in Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, going back to 1986, and that issue was more focused on what Gaddafi did in terms of terrorism. I think, if I remember right, he set off a bomb in a German discotheque where American soldiers frequented. And Reagan said enough is enough, and he took out Gaddafi. I believe it was members of his own family. I think, if I remember right, his house was burned and destroyed, and through Reagan's strikes. Reagan then went on the air and explained what he had done. And you know what, folks? We didn't hear from Gaddafi after that. He went into silence, and that's how government is supposed to function, and that's how government is supposed to operate. And so I look at this as the work of the Restrainer, which actually is a biblically significant, prophetically significant issue, because 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 6 and 7 indicates the restraint of evil. And God can use human government to do this, although I don't think the Restrainer mentioned there is specifically human government. It's the Holy Spirit predominantly, but we know from Romans 13, verses 1 through 7, that God created government to act as a, not the, but a restrainer. And to that, we again salute our president for doing this. Let's switch subjects, and here's where we're going to spend the most of our time. And this has to do with the world turning against Israel as God said the world would just before his return. Our biblical jumping off point for this is Zechariah chapter 12, verse 3, where Zechariah 2,500 years ago predicted, "It will come about in that day that I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone for all the peoples. All who lift it will be severely injured." And here's the key line: "All the nations of the earth will be gathered against it." And if saying that once is not enough, Zechariah repeats it over in the 14th chapter, Zechariah chapter 14, verse 2 and 3, where the Holy Spirit, through Zechariah, says, "I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to battle. The city will be captured, the houses plundered, The women ravished, half of the city exiled, etc., etc. And these two verses are very interesting prophetically because they predict that all of the world, not some, but all of the world will turn against Israel in the last days. And I'm here to tell you that that is happening. Nations that formerly were not against Israel have now turned on Israel. And we see that disease even spreading right here into the late, great United States of America. So to help us with this, notice this article from the New York Times. I just want to read to you the headline here. It has to do with mayoral, now no longer candidate, but mayoral-elect Mamdani in New York being sworn in on New Year's Day. And this headline says, Mamdani will be the first New York City mayor to use the Quran in his swearing in. The subtitle says, Zohran Mamdani, New York's first Muslim mayor, will use two family Qurans and one that belonged to the writer Schomburg at his two swearing-in ceremonies. So we have really come a long way in the United States of America where we ban the Bible from virtually anything under the guise of neutrality, which largely is a myth, by the way. And if that weren't enough, now all of a sudden we're substituting alternative religions for the Bible because nature abhors a vacuum. And so what used to be sworn in on related to political victors putting their hand on the Bible, now you've got a Muslim jihadist, a 12er, and a Marxist who is now the mayor of all of New York, and he's being sworn in on a Quran, and that is precedent setting. And so what I'm trying to explain is this cultural jihad of Islamic ideology is now being institutionalized in one of our top cities in the United States of America, New York City, otherwise known as the Big Apple, where, we find the Statue of Liberty and the saying, give us your poor, give us your tired, give us your hungry, a beacon of hope and light to the rest of the world has now been, to a large extent, Islamicized. And so as this happens in the United States of America, you can expect the United States of America's mentality towards the nation of Israel to change significantly, because in the Islamic mindset, Israel's existence in their current borders they're an occupying force. They're a usurper. Their very presence in that land is indicative, at least in the minds of Muslims, of disrespect towards Allah. This is how the Muslims think about the modern state of Israel. And as now major political offices are now being captured by Muslims, you can expect the United States of America to either soften its stance towards Israel or ultimately become hostile towards Israel. In other words, as this cancer of Islam spreads in the United States, you can see a scenario in place where the United States would join a coalition of nations being hostile towards Israel, which is exactly what Zechariah predicted for the end of the age. Notice this article here, and it has to do with Islamic involvement in education. Yes, they're in the education business. This is a front page article. This is dated December 23rd, 2025. It says Qatar-funded or Qatar-funded curriculum materials in New York City twist the truth of 9/11. And it talks here about letting the jihadis write the histories. What is this article about? Notice what it says. Many people have noted the irony. New York City, in which jihadis hit so hard September the 11th, 2001, have now elected as a mayor a man who was a 12er Shiite Muslim. Let me stop right there. What's a 12er? A 12er, a Shiite Muslim, is someone who believes that they need to cause chaos in the world so as to bring back the 12th imam. So they have to deliberately cause chaos to get the Mahdi, the 12th imam, to come back. It goes on and it says the same sect whose adherents among the leadership of the Islamic Republic of Iran regularly scream death to America. How could New Yorkers have elected such a man as mayor when New York City, above all other cities in the United States, knows what jihad is all about? The answer to that question is that New Yorkers don't actually know what jihad is all about. They have been systematically lied to, most egregiously in the New York City schools. And it mentions a couple of Republican congresspersons, Stefanik and Comer, seeking to expose this. Quote, the New York City Department of Education, they say, has refused to provide copies of teaching materials that twist the narratives of September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks and the Hamas-led massacre on October the 7th, 2023 in Israel. They raise concerns about curriculum and other content funded by Qatar and teaching materials from malign domestic actors that could give students a distorted view of 9/11. Why is Qatar funding a couple of public schools in Brooklyn? Could it be that the Muslim Brotherhood sponsoring regime wants to make sure that children are indoctrinated with a rosy, whitewashed view of Islam that puts as large a separation as is possible between the 9/11 attacks and the religion that inspired and justified those attacks? Why is an Islamic group in charge of teaching children how to understand what happened on 9/11? Anyone who has been in the National September 11th Memorial and Museum, and I've been there and seen it, knows how laughable this is, as the museum scrupulously avoids giving the impression that Islam had anything to do with the attacks on 9/11. MCN and bridging cultures are lavishly compensated for their distortion. They have received at least $14.7 million from New York City since 2014 public records cited by Stefanik and Comer clearly show. So what is going on here is Islam is in the education business. They want to get into these public schools. They're paying big money to do it with new curricula and curriculum. And they want to get into the minds of these impressionable school children and give the impression that Islam really isn't that bad. It's just an alternative religion and all that stuff about how Muslims took down the Twin Towers on September the 11th. That's just a myth. All of that stuff you've heard about Islamic aggression into the land of Israel, October the 7th, 2023. You can't blame Islam for that. Israel really caused the problems. And they're putting millions and millions of dollars into this education, and they're targeting, of all places, New York. And with that type of propaganda happening over the course of several years, even several decades, it really is no wonder why New Yorkers don't feel it's any big deal to elect a 12er, a jihadist, to the office of mayor. Here's a little picture that somebody sent me, and it's a picture of the Trojan horse, of course. And you know what the Trojan horse is from Greek mythology. And then you notice that the Trojan horse's side is fashioned like an airplane named Qatar. And that's largely what's happening in the United States. We have let the Qataris in. We have let them push educational propaganda. We have allowed them to invest I don't know how much money into our country, certainly in the area of billions. We have allowed them to give our president, the administration, the U.S. government a free airplane, and we've completely lowered the guard against the Qataris. And so they are now the proverbial nose under the camel's tent. They are inside, and their goal is to change the value system and the belief system of the United States of America through endless propaganda. And so now you can start to see why even a nation like the United States of America, that formerly was a friend of Israel, would eventually, in the end times, turn against Israel. Let me show you another way where this is happening. This is an article from the Dallas Express, and it says Broken Arrow. Now, that's a suburb in Tulsa, Oklahoma, if I have my geography right. It says the Broken Arrow, this is a city council, approves zoning for a massive Islamic center despite strong resident opposition. And this is dated, let's see, December the 18th, 2025. This is sort of a portrait or a picture of something that is happening all over the country. These Muslims, and of course, they get funding from outside of the United States, and they get people coming to these mosques that are brought into the United States of America. It's a completely different philosophy they have when they build mosques than we have when we construct our churches. You know, we don't bus people in from some other area. We try to build a church that meets the needs in that community, and we certainly don't receive government funding to do that. Eventually, the responsibility financially of the church rests with the laity that are fed and blessed by that particular church. But here with Islam, it runs completely different. You bring people in from the outside, and then you have money coming in from the outside to build these mosques. And the only thing really standing in the way is local city councils. And so what's happening is people are getting wind that a mosque is going up, and there's going to be a big vote concerning zoning and those kind of things that you need before you can build a mosque or a church. And people fill up the city council room in droves and say they don't want a mosque in their area. And the reason they don't want a mosque in their area is because what you learn in a mosque is not like going to a church and learning John chapter 3, verse 16. You go into a mosque, you're taught an ideology, a world conquest ideology. You're taught the necessity of Sharia law, which is a judicial system that is designed to run parallel with, in some cases, in supremacy to, the United States Constitution. And you're dealing with people that have absolutely no intention of assimilating into the current cultural system that exists in the United States of America. So people get wind that, oh my goodness, a mosque is going up in our area. I mean, this is Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. This is a very red state, a very red part of the country, and they're targeting those parts of the country because they know that if they can soften their influence to Islam, they can shift the value system of the United States concerning the nation of Israel. This is why all of these things are prophetically significant. They're setting the stage for Zechariah's predictions that all the nations will turn against Israel and Jerusalem in the last days. But at any rate, they fill up the city council meeting with dissenters, and then there's a vote that's taken, and the city council members could care less what the people want and vote with the mosque and those seeking to build the mosque. And then you start to wonder, well, who's financing these city council members? And this is a pattern or a blueprint that's now spreading all over the country. I'm just giving you one example of it. So this article says the Broken Arrow Planning Commission in Oklahoma has voted to approve rezoning for a proposed 38,000 square foot Islamic religious center, despite vocal opposition from residents who raised concerns about cultural integration, economic impacts, and infrastructure. The Islamic Society of Tulsa, known as ISOT, plans to rezone the land, which is currently used primarily for agriculture, to commercial general. The proposal includes the construction of a mosque, beginning with a prayer hall and later expanding into classrooms, a women's prayer area, and a gym, totaling approximately 38,000 square feet and accommodating up to 700 parking spaces. The meeting at Broken Arrow Hall drew a packed audience with more than 70 speakers participating in over 4 hours of public comment. While a handful spoke in favor of the project, the vast majority reflected in 144 opposition emails and dozens of phone calls to the city, according to the BA Sentinel, raised concerns about the project's compatibility with the surrounding area. Opponents, including many residents who filled the standing room only meeting, a turnout rarely seen at planning commission hearings, were quick to voice concerns about what they described as an imposition on the community. Some pointed to practical issues such as inadequate traffic infrastructure and potential flood plain problems near White Horse Creek. Cultural concerns were also a prominent theme, with some speakers warning of broader societal changes and comparing the proposal to growth patterns in communities such as Dearborn, Michigan. Resident Sean Murray expressed concerns about future generations, stating, quote, "We don't want that imposed on our kids. I have a daughter who's 15 years old, and I don't want this ideology imposed on her." Here's the bottom line. Despite public comments strongly opposed to the request, the commission approved the rezoning request by a 4-1 vote and granted the conditional use permit for a place of assembly by a 3-2 vote. What these people, Islam is trying to build, are not just mosques. I mean, ultimately, they're cities, miniature cities functioning autonomously within the United States of America that discriminate on the basis of if you're not Islamic, then you know what, you can't buy residential property, as in the case of Epic in the Dallas area, and speaking a completely different language, doing everything in Arabic, discriminating against non-Muslims, and teaching basically this doctrine of cultural supremacy. And we don't have to listen to the United States government because, you know what, Sharia law is going to be our new legal system, and we have no intention of assimilating. And here are the good residents of Broken Arrow near Tulsa, Oklahoma, speaking up against this and making their voices very clear and very well heard. And this zoning commission, which I guess is an arm of the city government there, could care less. And they just go ahead and vote the way they wanted to vote, as if the people didn't exist. And you start to wonder, why are they doing this? Why aren't they listening to the voice of their constituents? I thought that city council members, planning zone members, et cetera, were accountable to the people. Well, you get the feeling that they're being financed or funded by some other alternative source. And as you start to follow the money, you can start to see sort of a Qatari influence here. And I'm very sad to say that this is a pattern that is being replicated throughout the United States of America. And the citizens of the United States of America need to pay attention to it. I'm of the view that even if we started to pay attention to it, a lot of these city councils could care less what the people think. And that's exactly what's happening here in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Something similar is happening, and this takes us to a New York Post article. This one is dated December the 22nd, 2025, and this says, Kushner and Witkoff draft a $112 billion with a B proposal to develop Gaza into a smart city with luxury resorts. And here's what the article says. It says Trump administration representatives have just revealed a grandiose $112 billion plan to rebuild war-torn Gaza into futuristic international destination dubbed Project Sunrise. The 10-year plan, drafted by first son-in-law Jared Kushner, U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff, and two top White House aides, is currently courting investor countries with a 32-slide PowerPoint presentation detailing the bold plan to renovate burning rubble into beach resorts. Gaza would see the development of luxury hotels, high-speed rail, and AI-optimized smart grid features that would revolutionize the small slice of coveted Mediterranean coastline into a bustling metropolis, the Wall Street Journal reported. Gaza's destruction has been profound, the article, as it gives a quote, says, but we believe that what lies ahead is not just restoration, it's a chance to develop a gateway of prosperity into the Middle East with a state-of-the-art infrastructure, urban design, and technology, close quote, the executive summary slide read, according to the outlet. The total $112 billion cost would spread out over 10 years, with the U.S. agreeing to anchor up to $60 billion in grants and guarantees on debts by raising industry funds. Reimagining Gaza as a smart city with tech-driven governance and services is what one slide from the PowerPoint presentation beamed. Wow, this is such a big deal on so many levels. For starters, you can see that this will add, if it goes through, to the wealth of Israel, which will play a role in the invasion that's coming, because Ezekiel 38 verses 12 and 13 indicates that one of the motivations for the invaders will be the wealth of Israel. So this will contribute to Israel's already burgeoning wealth. I'm going to have more to say about that in our next podcast together. But another issue that this type of thing surfaces is now you can start to see why our politicians, Republican and Democrat, this administration included, who I've happened to be a supporter of, generally speaking, I voted for Trump 3 times. But you can see why this administration is always, wanting the Israelis to sort of control themselves, maintain, settle down, don't, cause too much trouble, don't root out the terrorists out of Gaza, because they're in a very delicate balancing act with things like this, where they want to actually use the Gaza Strip for wealth, revenue, and those kind of things. And as the administration falls in love with these kind of ideas, you can see why they would put pressure on the Israelis not to upset the apple cart. And the other reason I think this is prophetically significant is because notice this slide from the book of Joel, chapter 3, verse 2. In fact, even before we get to Joel chapter 3, verse 2, here's a larger map that shows you exactly where the Gaza Strip is. The Gaza Strip, that dark brown area, southwestern portion of the map, is an area that the nation of Israel essentially gave away to the inhabitants of Gaza in 2004. And those folks there had one and only one election. They elected Hamas in 2005. And ever since that point in time, that little strip has been used as a beachhead for terrorist tunnels and terrorist rockets and terrorist activities into the land of Israel, culminating in the events of October the 7th, 2023. And the Israelis were probably 2 weeks away from going in there and winning the war there, meaning they wanted to root out Hamas out of that territory, and the world community kept putting the brakes on it. Don't do that, the world community said, when in fact it's Israel's right to do that. And you could see what our country would do if someone was building a terrorist strip within our own borders. I mean, we wouldn't put up with that, but the Israelis are expected to live with it. And part of the reason they're expected to live with it is because of these constant deals that are being made, where they want to take that area and turn it into a resort area, or our administration is taking money and planes and those kind of things from Islamically controlled Qatar. And so they're taking a position where they're trying to make both sides happy. So that's what things like this do. And I believe this, that ultimately it will trigger the wrath of God because of what the prophet Joel says. Notice Joel chapter 3 and verse 2. God, through Joel, one of our earliest writing prophets, says, I will bring all the nations and I will bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and then I will enter into judgment with them there on behalf of my people and my inheritance, Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and they have divided up my land. Close quote. What triggers God in the end times is that the nations of the earth, plural, will divide his land. You know, it won't be the sin of abortion or homosexuality or teaching evolution in the schools or whatever that brings God's wrath in the tribulation period. It will be the deliberate intent of the nations to divide his land. Notice God says, it's my land. And I gave it to the Israelis in an unconditional covenant known as the Abrahamic covenant, going back to Genesis 12, verse 7, Genesis 15, verses 18 through 21, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you know that you're close to God's wrath when the nations of the earth want to divide that land up. And that's exactly what this Witkoff and Kushner proposal does. It's just, as Westerners, we tend to look at it differently because they're building hotels. But God never says it's okay to divide my land as long as it's luxury resorts. Any division of his land will trigger his wrath. And that's what, unfortunately, the Trump administration seems to be moving towards. I'm not sure the Biden administration would be any different here, but it's a sign of the time period that we're living in. One of the things you can look for as we get closer and closer to the end of the age is the intention of the surrounding nations to divide God's land. And here is the United States of America right in the midst of it. Speaking of how the United States is constantly being pressured to move more in a anti-Israel direction so as to pacify an Islamic coalition. Notice this particular article. This one comes from the Jerusalem Post. This one dated December the 22nd, 2025. It says Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, all Islamic countries, called on the United States to prevent Israeli strikes on Gaza, one source tells the Post. I mean, why can't the Israelis just go into Gaza, and it would have taken them 2 weeks? They were 2 weeks away from winning. Just root out Hamas out of Gaza, and then everything would be fine. Why can't the Israelis do that? Well, because the United States is involved telling the Israelis not to do it. And the reason the United States is involved telling the Israelis not to do it is Egypt and Qatar and Turkey are pressuring the United States of America. And the reason the United States of America is now open to being pressured is we're receiving all of this money, making all of these deals with Qatar. Believe me, folks, I'm not trying to make political statements when I go over this. I'm just trying to show you how credible the biblical scenario is that all nations will turn against Israel in the last days. The article says senior officials from Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey approached high-level U.S. officials asking them to prevent Israel from striking the Gaza Strip, according to a source familiar with the details who spoke with the Jerusalem Post on Monday. Their appeal included a request to block Israeli strikes both inside the Yellow Line and other specified locations. Trump announced that a board of peace encompassing regional and European leaders would be unveiled early next year regarding the proposed technocratic government intended to administer the Gaza Strip. A list of names has been submitted to Israel and is currently under review by Israeli intelligence agencies. So Israel, no strikes in Gaza, even though you suffered a terrible attack on October the 7th, which is the per capita, if not worse, than our own 9/11. What the Israelis experienced on October the 7th was the worst attack they have ever experienced since the Holocaust itself. And we're told that Israel can't go into Gaza and complete the job. Now you're starting to understand why. The global community pressuring the United States is pressuring Israel not to finish the job. And what are they going to have? They're going to have some kind of board of peace that's going to preside over this whole mess. What is that? That's the nations of the earth seeking to divide God's land, which shows us how close we are to the end times scenario from unfolding. And as we continue to look at this subject matter of the world against Israel, I've got a few articles here related to how the woke right, the woke Reich, as some have called it, is now also turning against Israel. I'm a lifelong Republican. I consider myself a conservative Republican voter. And the Republican Party has never been the home of extremism. I remember the days of David Duke, a blatant racist wanting influence in the Republican Party, and the Republican Party shut him out. I mean, that goes back to the 1990s. You can go back and you can see the late William F. Buckley speaking out against anti-Semitism within the conservative movement. And what has happened now is the conservative movement, the MAGA movement, so-called, is now opening the door to blatant anti-Semites. And so we have a woke left. Their anti-Israelism has captured the Democratic Party already. And now we see a split within the MAGA movement itself where it looks like this same sort of anti-Semitic cancer is now moving into the right wing of the political spectrum. And as that happens, we won't have a political voice left as Zionists. I mean, we're kicked out of the left. We're kicked out of the right. And so who are you going to get as candidates for office? People that really don't support the existence of the state of Israel. And so you can see that through this, the United States is being pulled into an anti-Israel sentiment. And she is actually being pulled into the coalition against Israel in the last days, which shows us where we are on God's prophetic time frame. Because as we get closer to the end of the age, Zechariah boldly predicts 2 times that all the nations of the earth will turn against Israel. This one from the Jerusalem Post, dated December the 22nd, 2025. It's from a group called Stop Anti-Semitism. And it names Tucker Carlson a MAGA influencer, a right-wing influencer, as the anti-Semite of the year. The subtitle of the article says, this is the second year in a row that Stop Anti-Semitism has selected a right-wing figure for this accolade after years of awarding the mantle mostly to left-wing figures. They used to give this award to the left because there was really no one on the right that was anti-Israel. Well, things have changed. And now they're giving this award to conservatives, just like they once gave it to liberals. So the article says this: the activist group Stop Anti-Semitism has awarded the conservative personality Tucker Carlson this honor of Anti-Semite of the Year, citing the frequent invocation of classic anti-Semitic stereotypes. The announcement comes as Carlson sits at the center of a controversy on the American right, whether extremists should be welcome into the Republican Party. It also marks the second year in a row that Stop Anti-Semitism has selected a right-wing figure for this accolade after years of awarding the mantle mostly to those on the left. Carlson mainstreams anti-Semitism by praising Holocaust revisionists and Nazi apologists, while hiding behind the irony and plausible deniability, the group said. By legitimizing extremist voices and weaponizing conspiratorial imagery at a massive scale, he has helped drag anti-Semitic ideas back into the mainstream. Now, you would think that mainstream political figures like our own Vice President, J.D. Vance, who I happen to agree with on most things, but certainly not this, would distance himself from Tucker Carlson. But J.D. Vance has gone completely out of his way to say that he will not distance himself from Tucker Carlson in spite of Tucker Carlson's behavior. The Republican Party didn't used to act like this. That's the point I'm trying to make. When extremism showed up, there's been a pretty good track record of the Republican Party distancing themselves from these kind of voices. That isn't happening anymore. So notice this particular article from Blaze Media, this one dated December the 22nd, 2025. And it says Vance refuses to throw Tucker Carlson under the bus. And he emphasizes America is a Christian nation. The vice president, explained in a recent interview why he won't turn on Carlson or waste his time on Nick Fuentes. Now, who is Nick Fuentes? Nick Fuentes is someone that Tucker Carlson platformed who is anti-Semitic. He's obviously racist against the Jewish people. He's a Holocaust denier, if not significant marginalizer. And this is who Tucker Carlson platforms. And here's J.D. Vance, who a lot of people think is going to be our next president after Trump, not distancing himself from the Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlsons of the world. In fact, Turning Point USA, TPUSA, Erica Kirk is already on record saying we've already endorsed J.D. Vance as the next president of the United States. We're going to stand behind him for the next election cycle for the presidency of the United States. And I'm saying, wait a minute. Do you know what this guy is doing related to Tucker Carlson and how he's not playing any role whatsoever in casting extremists out of the Republican Party? Why in the world would you endorse somebody like this, even though you happen to agree with him on a lot of issues, as do I? A few sentences from the article. It says Vance, the Republican frontrunner going into 2028, whom TPUSA CEO Erica Kirk endorsed last week for president, faces mounting public pressure to throw Tucker Carlson under the bus over his criticism of Israel and perceived bigotry, as well as censure Nicholas Fuentes, the head of the so-called Groypers, who has been particularly critical of the vice president. I don't bring a list of conservatives to denounce or to deplatform, Vance told the crowd of thousands gathered Sunday. We have more important work to do than canceling each other. The vice president underscored that the America First movement constitutes a big tent. So Nazis and Holocaust deniers are included under that big tent, Mr. Vance. Constitutes a big tent welcoming those who seek to make America rich, stronger, safer, and prouder. In a recent interview, and it gives the name of the editor that he did this interview with, Vance provided some insights into why he refused to denounce Carlson or waste any time discussing Fuentes. Quoting Vance, "I'm also a very loyal person, and I'm not going to get into the business of throwing friends under the bus." Vance further noted that the idea that Tucker Carlson, who has one of the largest podcasts in the world, who has millions of listeners, who supported Donald Trump in the 2024 election, who supported me, Vance says, in the 2024 election, the idea that his views are somehow completely an anathema to conservatism, that he has no place in the conservative movement, is frankly absurd, Vance said. As for Fuentes, Vance intimated that a condemnation of a 27-year-old host of America First podcast wasn't worthwhile. Stopping there for a minute, Adolf Hitler was once a young man. I think he was fairly young when he wrote Mein Kampf. Boy, wouldn't it have been different if people had paid attention to what he said and denounced him then and there and not allowed him to have access to the levers of society. Maybe World War II, as we know it, could have been completely different. Those who don't learn from history are condemned to repeat it. That's what Vance, in my humble opinion, is doing here as he refuses to distance himself from Fuentes on the account that the guy is only 27 years old. Quoting Vance, Fuentes' influence within Donald Trump's administration and within a whole host of institutions on the right is vastly overstated. And frankly, it's overstated by people who want to avoid having a foreign policy conversation about America's relationship with Israel, Vance said in the interview. If you believe racism is bad, Fuentes, listen to Vance here. If you believe racism is bad, Fuentes should occupy 1 second of your focus. Boy, those who don't learn from history are condemned to repeat it. We're repeating the mistakes of the past by not condemning Mein Kampf and its ideas because the person that wrote it is kind of obscure. And after all, he's too young. I mean, he deserves 1 second of our attention, Vance says. Now, as much as I like Vance, agree with Vance, agree with a lot of the things that MAGA is doing and stands for, this is a conservative movement. This is a Republican Party that's very, very different from the past. They are not distancing themselves from radicals, extremists, cultural jihadists, and anti-Semites. And you're starting to see how anti-Semitism is getting its proverbial nose under the camel's tent, not just in the liberal progressive movement, but in the conservative MAGA movement as well. And it's going to reach a point where, you know what, we're not even going to have any pro-Israel candidates on the ballot anymore because they can't win an election in a party apparatus that's controlled by anti-Semites on the left and the right. Joseph Lieberman in the Democratic Party used to speak out against things like this. Mainstream conservatives like the late William F. Buckley used to speak out against things like this. And what I'm seeing is the door to anti-Semitism is now opened on the right, and it's extremely difficult to close. Look, folks, I am not one of those that believes you can never condemn the modern state of Israel for anything. That's unrealistic. But what is happening is the criticism of Israel is moving into what I call the 3 Ds. Number 1, delegitimization, that Israel has no right to exist in her current borders. Number 2, defamation, where you say things like all Jewish people are greedy. All Jewish people are trying to take over the world, something that you would never say against any other racial group. And then it's also moving into the 3rd D that I call double standards, where Israel is treated with one standard and other countries are treated with a completely different standard. I mean, what we're requiring of the Israelis in Gaza, we would never require of ourselves if a terrorist cell was built within our own borders. And so it's not just criticizing Israel. It's not just kind of second guessing our relationship to Israel, as Vance said. It's criticism that's moving into the 3 Ds of delegitimization, defamation, and double standards. And this is what the Republican Party and MAGA movement is unfortunately opening itself up to. Here is another MAGA influencer that's going this exact same direction. This is an article from the New York Post, this one dated December 25th, 2025, and it says the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, accused Megyn Kelly, accused Megyn Kelly of using anti-Semitic trope against Ben Shapiro and victim-blaming Bari Weiss. Here's what the article says. The organization, that's the ADL, pointed to Kelly's recent allegation that Shapiro, a prominent conservative commentator, and Weiss, the editor-in-chief of CBS News, are making anti-Semites by trying to silence criticism of Israel, as well as Kelly's characterization of Shapiro as being Israel first. This is also something that's bothering me. If you're America first, you can't help Israel, like Harry Truman did, recognizing one of the first, if not the first, the modern state of Israel when she was born in 1948. I guess Harry Truman is not America first. Who else would not be America first by their standard? Richard Nixon wouldn't have been America first, because Richard Nixon received a call from Golda Meir in the middle of the night during the Yom Kippur War when the Israelis were losing, and he gave Golda Meir what she needed to win that conflict, going back to about 1973. So if Richard Nixon does that, I guess he's not America first. And I guess George Washington is not America first, because he wrote to the Toros Synagogue the very day he visited it, which was the first synagogue in the United States of America in Newport, Rhode Island. And he wrote a famous letter to them where he said, as Jewish people, you'll be able to sit in the United States under your own vine and fig tree, and none shall make you afraid. He talked about bigotry has no opportunity, no license in the United States of America, giving the Jewish people a gift that they've never had. You can come to the United States and you could worship the way you want. I guess George Washington is not America first either. And the truth of the matter is, if you bless the nation of Israel, you are America first. Because God says in his word, I will bless those that bless you. I mean, do you want America blessed, or do you want America cursed according to God's standards? I think we should be in the blessing business. America has always understood that. And now we have a situation where these popular pundits and influencers now say that type of talk is no longer America first, and they're trying to essentially take over the MAGA movement. Megyn Kelly's recent comments cross a dangerous line. Accusing Jews of making anti-Semites, blames Jewish people for the hate directed against them. A classic victim-blaming trope, the ADL wrote on social media on Tuesday. Calling Ben Shapiro Israel first invokes the age-old anti-Semitic dual loyalty trope that has fueled persecution and hatred against Jews for centuries, the organization added. ADL has documented time and again how this kind of rhetoric from public figures helps normalize anti-Semitism and may even endanger Jewish communities. It must stop now. The clash marks a sharp escalation in widening conservative media feud that erupted after Shapiro publicly rebuked Kelly at a Turning Point USA America Fest conference in Phoenix, accusing her of refusing to condemn conspiracy theories promoted by Candace Owens. More on Candace Owens in just a moment. In a thread on X, the ADL said Carlson has been spreading anti-Semitic conspiracy theories for years, has recently, as this past weekend, spread these theories. At America Fest, he now we're focused on Tucker Carlson, revisited conspiracy theories surrounding the USS Liberty, U.S. Navy intelligence ship attacked by Israeli forces during the 1967 Six-Day War. While U.S. and Israeli investigations concluded that the strike was a tragic case of mistaken identity, the incident has long been used by anti-Semites to argue that the Jews cannot be trusted and they secretly undermine American interests. It's totally fine to talk about why a foreign government tried to sink one of our ships in 1967, Carlson said from the stage, responding to Shapiro's defense of the official account. The ADLU countered earlier this week that such claims are frequently weaponized to advance anti-Semitic narratives about Jewish disloyalty. Anti-Semites often claim that the U.S. Liberty incident proves that American Jews cannot be trusted, the organization wrote on its X account. Carlson has gone further in recent months, devoting podcast time to alternative theories about the attack and interview figures who describe it as a deliberate false flag operation, claims that are rejected by historians and U.S. officials. Speaking of Megyn Kelly, she has accused Shapiro and Weiss of imposing an Israel First purity test on conservatives and weaponizing anti-Semitism accusation to silence critics. The feud appears to reflect a deeper fracture inside the conservative movement as some younger activists seem to be growing more skeptical of U.S. support for Israel. So what the Megyn Kellys, Tucker Carlsons, Candace Owens of the world are saying is if you're a Zionist and pro-Israel, you're not America first, not understanding the countless amounts of technology in terms of defending ourselves, the capacity to knock down missiles a long way away, how that technology and even domestic technology, cell phones and all of these things that we enjoy come to us through the nation of Israel. And so I still fail to understand how our current policy concerning Israel is somehow not America first. The truth of the matter is, as a biblicist, I would say this: the Israelis really don't need the United States of America because they've got God on their side. What America needs, though, is Israel. America needs Israel more than Israel needs America. And these types of anti-Semitic right-wing pundits apparently don't understand this because they keep accusing anyone that's a Zionist of not being America first. So this is what's happening to the MAGA movement. And cheer up, folks. It gets a lot worse. Here is our last article that we're going to look at here. This one comes from the Jerusalem Post. This particular one is dated December the 23rd, 2025. It says, Candace Owens urges her audience to read an anti-Semitic book and asserts that Jews controlled the slave trade. And this is just a horrific article in the sense that it brings to light what Candace Owens thinks and what she's disseminating to her massive audience. Political commentator Candace Owens urged her audience to read a 19th century anti-Semitic book and accuse the Jews of orchestrating the transatlantic slave trade and racial conflict between Caucasian and African Americans during her YouTube show over the weekend. The episode focused on Candace Owens' grievances with conservative pundit and Daily Wire co-founder Ben Shapiro, who criticized her in his Thursday speech at Turning Point USA America Fest conference. Owens rallied against Shapiro for the circumstances of her 2024 dismissal from Daily Wire under allegations of anti-Semitism and tensions with the editor emeritus. Further, she accused Shapiro of stealing interview guests and legal abuse and harassment against her over contractual disputes. According to Owens, Jews like Shapiro. Did you catch that? Jews like Shapiro. That's ascribing an attribute to all Jews when you would never do that with any other ethnic group. According to Owens, Jews like Shapiro believed that they were contract lords and that people are not allowed to violate contracts or you will ruin them for years. Addressing Shapiro, she said, "You absolutely have no values that exist outside of the Talmud. You describe yourself as a Talmudic Jew. And I've learned what's in the Talmud," Owens continued, holding up an English copy of, and I'm going to try my best to pronounce this, it's a German translation, Der Talmud Jude, I think is how you say that. I encourage other people at home to learn what's in the Talmud so that you know what Ben thinks of you, because he doesn't just hate me, he hates you too. He hates white men. He hates all black people. These are direct quotes from Candace Owens' podcast. Continuing with these quotes, if he's following the rules of the Talmud, I mean, when I say hate, they think we're animals, that they have a right to own us, make us worship them, lie to us, sue us, take everything that we have and deceive us, she said. Now, yeah, you get the impression that she's confusing Judaism with Islam, which the latter, which she hardly criticizes at all. Now, back to this book that she wants everybody to read called Der Talmud Jude by anti-Jewish German Catholic theologian August Rolling, claimed that the Talmud commanded the Jews to steal, lie, and cheat and kill Christians. The reason I put an emphasis on the word Catholic is Candace Owens is married to a Roman Catholic. She's, I believe, Roman Catholic herself, and the Roman Catholic Church has no place for the modern state of Israel because they believe in amillennialism or replacement theology, that the nation of Israel forfeited their blessings to the church, and God has cut off Israel as a nation forever. A doctrine called supersessionism or replacement theology, which is not taught in the pages of God's word. But Candace Owens isn't reading God's word. She's reading the words of a German Catholic theologian saying that Jews just want to subjugate everyone, they hate everyone, and they want to steal from everyone. This particular writer that Candace is pushing claimed that the Talmud commanded the Jews to steal, lie, cheat, and kill Christians. Rolling, the author of this piece that Candace Owens is pushing, this book, had repeatedly spread the libel that the Jews consume human blood in murder rituals. Listen to this. The theologians, this was written in the 1930s, scholarship was cast into doubt. I mean, this is a book kind of like the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, which was published in the early 1900s, saying that there's a Jewish conspiracy to take control of the world. The Jews are behind the media. The Jews are behind the money and the banking industry. And it turns out that that piece was an anti-Semitic piece of garbage and trash, and it was heavily plagiarized, and it was discredited long ago. And yet people still promote it. People still encourage people to read from it to pacify their anti-Semitic assumptions and presuppositions. That's what Candace Owens is doing right now through this 1930 book that she's promoting. The theologian that she's promoting has poor scholarship, and scholars don't take her book seriously. The theologian's scholarship was cast into doubt during a libel suit against one of his detractors. But Der Talmud Jude has remained a mainstay of anti-Semitic texts. I may have misspoken and said that the author was female. I guess the author is male. It really doesn't matter to me. I know anti-Semitism when I see it. Owens spread other conspiracy theories as well, saying that the American slave trade was controlled by the Jews. She called on Black Americans to turn their ire on Jews instead of holding grudges against white Americans. The podcast hosts further indicated the belief that the Jews were manipulating different religious and ethnic groups to fight one another. I implore you to wake up to these people who believe that they are contract lords. I challenge Black Americans to wake up to your true history because your quarrel is not with white men, said Owens. Wake up to who publishes these books and keeps us warring with one another. Christian versus Christian, right? Christian versus Muslim. Wake up and learn the true history of slavery, because that was wasn't exactly a white man's sport. Jewish people were the ones who were trading with us. Jewish people were in control of the slave trade. They buried a lot of it, but it's there and you can find it, close quote. Later, when responding to comments from supporters, Owens slams Shapiro as being part of the synagogue of Satan because he orchestrated, quote, lies, bullying, and getting people to write articles smearing and libeling, close quote. Owens said Shapiro at the beginning, said of Shapiro at the beginning of the show, "That is what I'm sensing." She's saying these things because she's sensing them. I mean, you wonder what's influencing her. Maybe a demon. That's what I'm sensing. That's what he knows something about Erica Kirk. Every time he speaks, I grow more certain that Israel might be involved in the 9/11 event, which is the Charlie Kirk assassination, close quote. So here's where she opens the door to, Erica Kirk and the Mossad itself could have been involved in Kirk's assassination. And she's already gone on record. We've dealt with this in prior podcasts that the Calvary chapels are pro-Israel because they are a kind of a pro-CIA Zionist operation. I mean, this is the insanity that this woman spews regularly. And she's doing this amongst the MAGA movement. At America Fest, Shapiro said that Owens had cast aspersions at Kirk and TPUSA staff every day since the murder of the organization's founder. The Daily Wire host said that those with influence had a moral obligation to call out Owens and others who implied or claimed that TPUSA, the Mossad, and French intelligence were involved in a cover-up of Kirk's murder. Erica Kirk and TPUSA never should have been put in the position to have to defend themselves against such specious and evil attacks, particularly at a time of mourning, Shapiro said. And the people who refuse to condemn Candace's truly vicious attacks, and some of them are speaking here, are guilty of cowardice, he further said. Amen, Ben Shapiro. Shapiro went on to attack other right-wing influencers such as journalists Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly for failing to address Owens' conspiracies, engaging in conspiracy theories of their own, and flirting with radical right-wing elements. So the right, whether you're talking about Megyn Kelly, whether you're talking about Candace Owens, whether you're talking about Tucker Carlson, is now mainstreaming conspiracy theories and anti-Semitic thought. Notice this concluding slide here. This is not an article, just a quick slide. This is from Stu Peters. This one goes back a little bit to December 17th, 2023. This is what he said right after the October 7th attack. Scripture, he says, writes this on X, has been weaponized against Christians. We have to understand that the pro-homosexual, pro-baby-killing, secular nation state calling itself Israel and founded in the 1940s is not the Israel of the Bible, close quote. I guess one question I would have for him is, how come the Muslims never got the memo? Because if the Israel in the land today is not connected to the Israel of the Bible, why are the Muslims trying to wipe them out? Why are the Muslims trying to kill them if the Jews living in the land today are not true Jews? And even if it's true, Israel being a secular state, pro-homosexual, pro-baby killing, I think some of those things are exaggerated. So what? I mean, God said he would bring the nation of Israel back into their land in unbelief. You've got unbelievers acting like unbelievers over there. And whatever the Israelis are doing, if these allegations are even true, is small potatoes compared to what Islam is doing by sponsoring terror all around the world. And how come the Stu Peters of the world are not criticizing Islam, but they're directing all of their wrath and all of their anger against the nation of Israel? Well, I'll tell you why it's happening. It's happening because God said it would happen. God said all the nations would turn against Israel and Jerusalem in the last days. Countries that are formerly pro-Zionist would turn. Muslim countries already have turned. The cancer or disease of spreading Islam, contaminating the West, will cause the West to turn. And we're literally living in a time period where the prophetic scriptures are leaping right off the pages into prophetic fulfillment. By the way, look at that picture there. Notice he's giving this report on InfoWars. I mean, isn't that Alex Jones and his operation? I can't tell you how many people have tried to sell me on Alex Jones. Isn't Alex Jones wonderful? Alex Jones is exposing the New World Order. When I first heard of Alex Jones, I was a little attracted to him politically, in the sense that he was exposing the New World Order. But I saw very fast that Alex Jones quickly traffics into anti-Semitic thought, blaming the New World Order on the Jews. In fact, we have had somebody that was attending our church. Thankfully, they're no longer attending our church. They were attending for a few weeks. They gave me this big stack of books, things that they had ordered off Alex Jones' website. And I started looking through some of those books, and we couldn't get those books out of our house fast enough, because it's obvious when you start getting into that kind of literature, that genre, it's blame the Jews for everything. It's just regurgitating the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. And this is how the right is being contaminated. So in conclusion, here's what we looked at today. We looked at the Restrainer. We looked at the world against Israel. And just some things by way of conclusion. Notice Titus 2, verse 13. It says, looking for the blessed hope and the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. Before God's wrath is unleashed on this planet, and we know why it's coming, they're going to divide his land. God promises to take those that know him out of this earth before his wrath falls. That's something else that you'll see demonized constantly in the Alex Jones sphere, is they attack over and over again the doctrine of the pre-tribulational rapture. If someone is attacking the blessed hope of the church, and they're over and over again promoting anti-Semitic thought, it doesn't matter if they're right on an issue or two. I am going to distance myself from such people, and you should distance yourself from such people as well. And so you can be tied into this wonderful promise simply by placing your faith, your trust in the finished work of Jesus Christ. You can do that now, even as I am speaking. Some infomercials as we wrap up here. Enjoy Andy Woods Ministries in podcast format. Enjoy Andy Woods Ministries on our free app, which you can download from the App Store. Enjoy our content from Andy Woods Ministries on our website. And while you're there, sign up for our newsletter, which you will receive once a week. Free newsletter if you sign up. If you have a Bible question, check out our Ask Andy AI search tool. If you're thinking of seminary training, check out Chafer Theological Seminary, the school that I'm the president of. And as you look at this slide here, you see that you can now sign up for a class for the spring semester, and you can do that up through the 21st of this month. And while you're checking out Chafer, download the latest installment of our journal entitled Pneumatikos. And we're very excited now because we're on the home stretch. The SLBC 5th Annual Prophecy Conference is right around the corner. February 20th through 21st. As you look at the slide there, you can see all of the exciting speakers that we're going to be having at this conference. And registration is filling up. Go to profcon.com to learn about it. All day Friday the 20th, all day Saturday the 21st. We moved it over to the Sugarland Marriott so as to accommodate more people. A banquet Friday evening, also special worship and music by Olam Worship. Paul Wilkinson, Russ Miller, myself, Olivier Melnick, Patrick Wood, Alex Newman, a special interview with Alyssa Hooray. All of these things are going to be taking place at our 5th Annual Prophecy Conference, and we don't want you to miss it. So sign up, and we'd love to see you here in Sugarland. Right after that is the Chafer Theological Seminary Pastors Conference, March 2nd through 4th. And you can see some information on that on the slide in front of you. And then right after that, March the 14th, 2026, is an all-day Saturday event, the Stealing the Mind Conference. I'm one of several speakers dealing with prophecy and cutting worldview issues in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And then as late as August the 1st, 2026, is a prophecy conference in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. You can see the speakers there, hosted by comingsoonministries.org. And don't forget about our Compass Bible Lands cruise. 5-star ship, 9-day cruise, 3 countries, 5 days in Israel. I've noticed that we've added a 3rd bus, so it's not sold out any longer. You can get on board with this and look at the places and Bible lands that it goes to, featuring live teaching from myself and Bill Perkins on the ship and at these different locations. And last but not least, my book, The Bible and Your Vote, is out. Please take advantage of it, as the election cycle will soon be upon us. That's all I've got for today. Lord willing, we will see you next time on Pastor's Point of View. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing this ministry. Thank you for giving to this ministry. And thank you for caring about this ministry. And Happy New Year to everybody. We're going to have a great New Year in the Lord as we bring you these prophecy updates. And Lord willing, we will see you next time on Pastor's Point of View. God bless you.